I think men do this too. It's easy for us to check out, to put on the game, to play the game, to be busy doing stuff. Just always in the garage, always in the backyard. Just nothing wrong with any of these things I'm naming. But when our motive is, I just don't want to. I know if I go in there, she's gonna start. I know it. I know it. Pass her out. I know it. If I go in there, she's gonna start. And so that's why I stay out here, or I work late, or I'm just trying to isolate myself away from my spouse. And that's the thing that we want to sound the alarm on, is that's a means of isolation that does not help your marriage. That is not harmless. You are not in neutral. You're in reverse. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Rod.
And this is Kai.
And welcome to
Married in the Middle.
We have been married for 18 years. We have 4 amazing kids and a dog named Appa.
This podcast is about helping marriages flourish through the challenges of the middle years.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Rod.
And I'm Kai.
And welcome to
Married in the Middle.
We are, so glad that you've given us the opportunity to share some stuff with you today. I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, share this content. Our goal here in Married in the Middle is to provide helpful, thoughtful content and resources to aid you as you're dealing with the challenges of being married in the middle years in a way that's authentic, honest, and hopeful. Today, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our heart. When we started this podcast, and we're not doing this podcast for likes or popularity or notoriety. We're doing this podcast because we want to see marriages last. We want to see people build generational legacies of marriages that extend to the end of our lives. That the thing that should break up marriages is death. Right. And we want to see that.
Right. And it doesn't come from a place of a couple who's accomplished it all. We're actually walking through these things that we're actually experiencing ourselves in our own marriage.
Yeah.
So.
And so I want to start by saying that we want marriages to last. And in order for that to happen, there are some things that we need to do. And I hope you've been gleaning some of that from some previous episodes. But there are also some things that we need to avoid.
Undo.
or undo. Yeah. And we want to talk today about doors of separation. What are the things that lead marriages to places where people are thinking about, should I just walk out the door and not come back? Should I just call my lawyer? Should I just put an end to this? What are the things that lead to that? It doesn't happen overnight. There are intentional steps that people take that lead towards opportunities for separation and distance in marriage. And we just want to call some of those things out today. Just want to call some of those things out. I think a big thing that I want to say is these doors are not harmless. It's not something we just happen to do, or it's not something that's not going to take a toll and have an effect on our marriage. It is going to have an effect on our marriage,
right? And
we need to be aware of that and cognizant of that as we journey through this.
Right. Some of them are harmless in and of itself, but some are harmful.
Yeah.
Some of the doors can be harmful right off the bat.
Yeah.
So
I think a good way to frame this is to look at what are the motives and the intents. That's our dog Appa. So just kind of bear with us. So what are in these things? What is the reasoning behind what you're doing? And so, for instance, one thing I'm gonna talk about is fantasy football. If you're a guy out there, you're probably in a fantasy football league right now, paying attention to your players and your scores. And the question can be like, what's wrong with fantasy football? It could be nothing wrong with fantasy football. It could be completely fine for you to do, but the question needs to be, or you need to ask the question, what's motivating this involvement? And if the motivation is to escape the frustration of having to deal with my wife, then that can be something that raises a red flag, and I want us to pay attention to. So.
Right, because that's a big part of being married in the middle, is that we start to settle in ways, and sometimes those habits are unhealthy habits that we're beginning to form, and it can come as a result of just resentment over time that's been built up, busyness, hecticness, and kind of withdrawing into your own worlds and finding these outlets that give us reprieve from our current situation.
Yeah. So the first door is an escapism through work. So the first door is overworking. And we understand you need to work, and understand there are bills to pay, and life is expensive, and we want to build this nest egg, and we have all these things. And again, there's nothing wrong with working. Work is honorable. Work is before the fall. Work is a part of how God created us in creation and what we're supposed to do. But I think when we're working for the sake of escaping from having to be home, having to engage, and finding all of my validation, all of my affirmation from what people tell me at work, or what my boss says about my performance, or the results or the numbers that I'm getting, or the money that I'm making, it can become a place of separation and distance in your marriage.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think when we hear overworking, I think the immediate person that we think about is the husband. But this can be very evident in the lives of women as well. I mean, a lot of women have to work these days and to help to support the family, which is fine. But I think that sometimes we can find a sense of escapism at our job, where it seems easier to deal with the people at work at times. I mean, we spend so much time with them, and they seem to get, quote unquote, get me.
Right.
They can be easier to get along with. They don't have to see the real you. They don't have to see every aspect of you. They see one aspect of you, and it kind of flows, sometimes really smoothly in a work environment. And it can be easier to just spend a lot of time there at work, picking up extra shifts, or, working overtime, or for women, overworking in a sense of the lives of our children, finding more and more committees to be a part of, to feel this sense of importance. I think there's a badge of pride that we wear when we can be at our children's events, which is fine, and it's beautiful.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that we're trying to show, is that not all of these doors are harmful in and of themselves, but like you said, the motive behind why we do what we do is what we have to be aware of.
Yeah. Particularly for men, work is easy to measure. And so if I work X number of hours, I know I'm going to receive X number of dollars, which puts my family in a certain position that when this question is asked, well, how did you get to that position? The man can say, well, I worked really hard for us to be here. It's a easy, measurable win.
Yeah.
Not that the work is easy, but measuring that work could be easy. And when there's a discussion or tension or confusion, you can say, well, look how hard I worked, or look how much I provided. Didn't I give all of these resources to the house? It's an easy way for us to check a box.
Right.
And again, work is honorable, but I think if we're checking that box and neglecting the other boxes, or if we're making this great investment at work and not making an investment anywhere else, that's going to be problematic for your marriage in the long haul, particularly, and this involves pastors and ministry leaders as well.
Especially, yeah.
It can be so easy for you to take care of God's house and neglect the house that God's called you to do your first ministry with. And we could just be running. This is men and women, and just think, well, I'm doing God's service.
Right.
Where really you honoring God is caring for your first ministry, which is your spouse and your family.
That's a tricky area in particular. I mean, I remember starting the church, those first few years, I didn't feel like I had a place to stop you from running as hard as you were running. Or us as hard as we were running. I felt like this was God's work. And, it can be complicated in situations like that for a spouse, whether it's the man running heart in ministry or the woman, to interject on that, because we feel like, well, this, if it's God's work, then should I really be interrupting it?
That's so. I remember one argument we got into around those years. You were questioning, rightfully so, how hard I was running, and the feeling I had is, you are attacking my life's work.
Right.
You know, this is my life's work. I had so intertwined
your identity,
my identity and who I am with what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just you questioning hours of the day. It was you attacking all that I am. And thankfully, there's been some undoing of that in my life. But I think it doesn't just happen to pastors.
Right.
It happens to guys that run nonprofits, ladies that run nonprofits, guys starting their own business, some managerial level. It happens when we intertwine our identity with what we do and not in who Christ says we are. Right.
And some people may feel like this is not something that we necessarily struggle with. And I guess the question would be to do you not struggle with it because you've become apathetic and just said, this is just how it is?
And we're just not going to touch this area of our
right.
marriage.
And so we just both withdraw from that and leave that alone. And meanwhile, it doesn't mean it's not affecting the other person,
right, or
the family. It just means that it's just being overlooked or swept under the carpet, which can lead to resentment over time. Yeah.
That's one pause there for a second. Like, if you had one spot of skin cancer or one spot of some sickness on your body, you wouldn't neglect it, because you know that it spreads, that it's contagious. And we're coming out of a pandemic where everybody had masks on because you were fearful of catching this virus. And I think there's some areas of our marriage where we've just accepted stuff that we shouldn't accept.
Right.
And like that's just who he is, or that's just how she's wired, or it's just always been this way. Like, forget all of that.
Yeah, I think it's really alarming whenever I hear a couple say, "Oh, we don't argue about anything," or we don't get into it about anything. Yeah. If there's never any tension in your marriage, it may be because one or both people are withholding their true feelings.
Yeah.
And one or both could be completely oblivious to the fact that they are not really addressing some concerns that they have, or some resentment that's going on in their hearts, because we know that we're messy.
Yeah.
And you put two messy people together, it's going to create a mess at some point or another. And some can get along in different ways, at different levels, but at some point or another, there should be some tension. Tension and challenge isn't a bad thing, because it's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
But when we find ourselves using these outlets, it plants seeds of separation that just, you kind of you moonwalk away from each other little by little until you look up and, you're like, who is this person?
Yeah. And this is it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And if you don't stop it, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
And so that's the first one, overworking. The next one would be fantasy. Now, I already mentioned some of this in fantasy football, but it's not just about football. It can be fantasy in terms of some escape that your mind goes to as a way not to have to deal with the reality of marriage.
Right.
So this could be an escape of what if I lived in a different place, or what if I had a different job, or what if I married a different person, then I wouldn't have to deal with what I'm dealing with. Like if I could do something different, or if I would have done something different, then I can create this fantasy place in my mind. And the scary thing is, like, you can go there and nobody knows.
Right.
Nobody knows if you don't say anything. And you can go there for reprieve and to just have this idea or this obsession in your mind that you're dealing with, and it's your personal way of escape. Here's the deal. There's something you're believing in that fantasy that is over promising and under delivering.
Yeah.
So whatever that thing is, you're saying, man, if I had this thing or if I had this person, then that would give me blank, whatever that is. Could be comfort, could be peace, could be acceptance. Like, so you could be fantasizing about this person and thinking, man, if I was married to this person, I bet I wouldn't argue as much. I bet it would be further along in life. I bet my kids would respond. And you start building this fantasy in your mind,
right,
that by the time you come out of that fantasy and you have to come back to reality and deal with your real spouse, now you're looking at her sideways,
right,
and you don't know why you're looking at her sideways.
And I think that's a deception of fantasy. First of all, we're obsessed with fantasy.
Yeah.
Marvel, people love Disney, Star Wars, so on and so forth. We're obsessed with this fictitious idea of something, whatever it is. And when we talk about fantasy within a person's mind, we think that it's just us. Well, it's just me. This is the place where I can go in my mind that makes me feel better or gives me a sense of relief. But it does spill out. Yeah. That's the deception. It's not just you, because it begins to change your perception of your spouse. It begins to change your perception of your children, of your job, and it leaves you in a place of discontentment. You know, and you're constantly now you're comparing your family, your spouse in particular, against something that's not real. Because typically when in fantasy, when we think of something, we usually think of it better than it actually is.
Right.
So if a person is fantasizing about another person, they're not really thinking of the flaws of that other person. They're thinking of like a more illuminated version of that person. And now you're comparing your spouse to this illuminated version of someone that's not real. Yeah. Because we all know that to know someone is to live with them, right?
Right.
So we don't, lunch is here.
We'll be back. Hey, what's up? We hope you are enjoying that episode. I want to encourage you to like, comment, share, subscribe. If you are listening to this on a podcast, I want to encourage you to leave a review.
Leave a review, yes. And we want to let you guys know that we're trying to build a community of middlers. So we have a Patreon page where you could interact with us on a more personal level. You can get exclusive content. So if you want to know more about our Patreon page, check out the description box below and click on that link. So enjoy the episode.
Peace.
Yeah, so I think another aspect, us imagining that things would be so much better. I think that's kind of the concept of the grass is always greener. Yeah. On the other side, instead of allowing yourself to deal with your present reality, your mind is somewhere else. I've even done that when it comes to house. Like we're planning to move at some point in the near future. Right. But sometimes when I look at how the kids are keeping the house or whatever, if things are messy, I'm just like, all right, in the next house, this is how this is going to look and how that is going to look. And, and so you get caught up in that world, and you don't get to appreciate and really just be where you are, be present where you are.
When I'm in fantasy, I can't be present in where I'm really am, right? Where God has me, and I have no appreciation for it. And so I'm just like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. And you're missing the life that God's giving you to live on purpose, because you're stuck in lusting after something that he hasn't given you. Yeah. And may never give you and may not want for you. I think it's unproductive. Yeah. It's a fruitless endeavor to spend our days.
It just feels good. It feels good to be able to escape there. I think a big catalyst of this, and we still want y'all to watch and everything, but I feel like social media is a really big catalyst of it's like a newer type of fantasy. Maybe some people, back in the day zoned out with just video games or TV, but social media sometimes when we're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, it's a type of fantasy. It's a type of living through other people or seeing things that we desire, and it just continues to snowball into a place of discontentment. Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important that they subscribe to this podcast so you can get the little ding, and so you know when the podcast is out, so you don't spend too much time.
This is purposeful, right? This is fruitful.
Man, I think another door is, and this is a popular one, just isolation.
Yeah.
Isolation. You want to take this first?
Yeah, I feel like you low key like.
All right, no, it's cool.
No, it's fine. It's cool. No, I do. This is a place for me. And again, we talk, bringing it back to the.
Gotta be real.
We are. This is marriage in the middle.
Yeah.
And at this point, we are finding we see that the marriage in and of itself is not what we expected, and it's harder than we thought.
Yep.
And so we look for these ways to make ourselves feel better. And I think isolation is one of those ways that we can escape. And that's a big one for me. And I can always mask it in I just need some time alone. You know, I'm constantly, you know, I'm a nurse. I serve there. I have 4 kids. I serve there. I have, you know, help my husband. And so I think rightfully so. Sometimes I do need some time just to myself. Nothing wrong with that. I think where it becomes problematic is back to that motive and intent. Mm-hmm. Why am I like? How much time am I spending? You know, alone or away to myself? And that doesn't even necessarily mean that I have to go somewhere, but to isolate myself. Like maybe, you know, I there are times where we have tension, some heated fellowship. Yeah. And it's hard, you know, it's hard, and I just don't feel like dealing with it. Yeah. Sometimes it might be this, maybe we just talked about some topic or whatever, and here we are again. Mm-hmm. And I'm just and I'm just tired, and I'm just like, okay, he comes in the room, I'm going in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm busy, I'm doing stuff in there, you know, but all
of a sudden, her hair needed attention.
I got, you know, gotta get Sasha together. That's her name, Sasha. Or you know, just a sense of avoidance. Even I find from my children, and it becomes it can become scary. Mm-hmm. That the more I find myself enjoying that time alone, because then I'm seeking it more. And so I think that there is some healthy places that you can draw, like, okay, you need some time to yourself, go grab a cup of coffee or whatever it is. I love to go get a cup of coffee early in the morning and go sit at the beach. It's very relaxing, but that wanting to constantly, isolate because I'm avoiding what's too hard.
That's the motive. Because I'm avoiding the hard thing. Yeah. I think men do this too. It's easy for us to check out, to put on the game, to play the game, to be busy doing stuff. Just always in the garage, always in the backyard. Just nothing wrong with any of these things I'm naming. But when our motive is, I just don't want to. I know if I go in there, she's gonna start. I know it. I know it. Pass her out. I know it. If I go in there, she's gonna start. And so that's why I stay out here, or I work late, or I'm just trying to isolate myself away from my spouse. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that we want to sound the alarm on, is that's a means of isolation that does not help your marriage, that is not harmless. You are not in neutral, you're in reverse.
Yeah, that's good.
You're not in neutral, you're in reverse. And so the encouragement is, how do we sit down honestly and deal with what we got to deal with? Right. So I'm not just becoming this cold, callous person. Right. That it gets to a point where nothing you say matters. You say the most insulting thing to your husband. You think it's going to bring him to his knees when you say this, and you say it, and he's like,
Next.
That's not a good place to be at. The other one, I think the obvious one in a divorce separation is that of another relationship. This is someone that arises that sparks your interest. It may be physical. It may be emotional. It may be psychological, right? It may be spiritual. And this person of the opposite sex has now sparked your interest. You're frustrated at home. You're not communicating. You're overworked. You're feeling underappreciated. Mm-hmm. You're used to isolating yourself. And now this person pops up. Mm. And she's saying all the things your wife never says. He's saying all the things your husband never says. And now he's complimenting her, and he's pointing out these attributes that she has, and she's bragging on how hard he works and how much he provides. And all of a sudden, stuff is happening. You're holding the conversation too long. You're getting less concerned with who sees.
Right.
And before you know it, you find yourself in a situation.
In an entanglement.
And
oh God, I wasn't planning to say that, but that was so good. It fit so well there.
No, it's man, you threw me off on that.
Oh my goodness. It's funny.
Man, you threw me off on that. No, so it's like and you know, if you talk to people after an adulterous relationship, 9 times out of 10, there's a part of them that wonders, man, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Now, sometimes folk know how it happened, because they've been so walking in and through these doors of separation. Pornography is another thing that makes this door of separation a reality, because you're so used to seeing these over sexualized images on television, or not television, but on phones and on the internet and what have you, and you see this over sexualized person on the screen that's doing things that your spouse may not be doing, or you think your spouse should be doing those things, or the way that person does it, when that person is really a sex slave in a slave industry, that not probably doesn't want to be doing those things anyway, if you got down to the core of it. And now you're putting unrealistic expectations on your spouse, and now you are having inappropriate relationships with other people. And this is, pause here, this is disastrous.
Yeah.
Like, it's what I'm talking about is like an atomic bomb being placed in a home with innocent bystanders all around, and you're playing with matches.
Yeah. And I think that when a person is wrapped up in that, at times, it's really all that they can see.
Yeah.
And they become, slowly but surely they start defending that relationship. If somebody catches something like, hey, I saw you guys were talking for a while, or I saw the way you guys kind of looked at each other. What's going on? No. And you start making excuses for that relationship. Those are major, major red flags. And listen, don't put it past anyone. I'm not telling you to go out there and just start saying, I don't trust you. I'm going to start checking every little thing. But even for yourself, you woman, you man, husband, you wife, don't put it past yourself, because early in the marriage, I think no one really suspects that this is something that they would be wrapped up in. And I would say most people don't necessarily plan to be wrapped up in something like that. But then you get to marriage in the middle. And it's unmet expectations, and it's not what you expected it to be, and you realize that it's a lot of work, and that becomes something that these doors become a sense of relief for you.
Even if and the prayer is, the hope is that you never find yourself in that entanglement. But even if you don't, the pressures of marriage in the middle, you kind of see how they got there. It's not this, it's kind of see how that happened. And maybe you're listening to this and it happened. And maybe you're sitting watching with your spouse. Your spouse sent you this video, and maybe you committed that sin. The craziness of the gospel is that there's grace for you too. That we have seen God walk marriages through even the painful incidents of divorce. Now it's a walk, right? It's repentance. Journey, it's building back trust. It's respecting boundaries. It's showing true repentance in your heart. There are a lot of things that are involved in that. But I've seen God heal marriages and build back marriages again. And we're going to have an episode on that real soon, so stay tuned. But I think it's important for us to pay attention. To pay attention so we don't knowingly or in a cocky way walk down or walk through that same door of separation that I'm talking about.
Right.
Now.
And when he says pay attention, he means pay attention to your own heart.
Yeah.
I think if we are paying attention to our hearts, then we can get the log out of our own eye, Matthew chapter 7, and instead of the speck out of the other person's eye. And that doesn't mean not be cautious, because maybe you suspect that something is going on with your spouse. I wouldn't say to ignore something like that. But we have to be careful of our own hearts, so that we don't find ourselves in situations like that.
Yeah. Because
we're human, and there are beautiful, attractive people in this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think to try to ignore that, or to try to make it seem like you are never attracted to another person I don't think you're being real. Yeah. You know, there are beautiful people in this world, and I think you can acknowledge that. It's not you acknowledging that. It's where does your mind go with that? How far do you let your mind go? How far do you let your actions go with that?
No, that's good. So what does it look like for us to walk down the hallway and not turn into these doors of separation? So I want to walk for the long haul. I want to build this legacy of marriage that I leave to my children and my children's children. What does it look like for us to walk through that hallway? One of the first things I say is we need a renewed definition of what love is. This word love is thrown around in our culture. It's thrown around in a haphazard kind of way. We need to be clear on what love means, so I can be cultivating that with my spouse. And so I get this definition of love from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and it's verses, I believe, 4-7. It says, love is patient, love is kind. Love does not envy, it doesn't boast, it is not arrogant or rude, it does not insist on its own way, it is not irritable or resentful. It doesn't rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoice in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. That's the 1 Corinthians definition of love. And so I think we need to apply that in how we're loving one another. So love is not going to keep this record of wrong. Some of us, when we walk through the hallway, we're dragging a suitcase, and that suitcase is filled with all the stuff that your spouse did wrong. So the minute they look like something they did may trigger something they done in the past, you go to your suitcase, open it up, turn to chapter 7 in your collection and pull out card 32 and say, remember when you, that kind of thing. I think it's important to have a short list of grievances against your spouse, and be quick to forgive and be quick to repent, and not hold what someone may have done over their head forever and a day.
Right.
What are some other things that we can do as walking through this hallway?
I think that we've been hammering at this so much, but communication. Yeah. Like, are you talking to your spouse, even about the doors? I think there's something very vulnerable and transformative about confessing to your spouse the doors that you feel like you're escaping into, or have the temptation to escape into. And now this is the real deal, right? Yeah. Like to go to your spouse and to
brother,
say,
I hear you. You ain't say nothing to me, but I hear your response right now.
To go to your spouse and to say, I find that I'm attracted to this person, or I finding that I'm enjoying time away too much, or I really have been staying at work to avoid you because it's been hard. Like, it's hard because you know that what you're going to say is going to hurt.
Yeah.
And then you got to think of all the, we know our spouses, so we already know their hurt response. Mm-hmm. And, we don't want that backlash. But I think digging in, pressing in is where you produce authenticity and where the love, because our love can be wide, but for it to grow deeper, we have to engage the hard things.
And I'll say this, I don't know if every couple is to that place. I want to leave a little space for grace.
That's a hard thing.
It's a very hard thing. And I can hear brothers saying, man, you must have lost your rabbit mind. Ain't no way I'm telling her none of that.
Your rabbit mind.
No way. Like, and if that's your case, okay, maybe you don't tell her this, mm-hmm. but can you tell her this? Okay, maybe you can't tell her this part of it. Can you tell her this part of it? How can you grow in your confession, in your transparency with your wife? At some point, bro, she need to see the real you. And the longer you walk in this thing called marriage, the heavier the mask gets.
That's good.
And I think the more we can work towards transparency, I think the better off we'll be. Yeah. I think another thing is that as we walk down this hallway, a lot of times the culture tells us, and we tell ourselves, it's about me.
Live your best life.
And we're so selfish.
Right.
In marriage, that we're so concerned about ourselves that we don't.
This mindset, like to rid your life of the things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But who says that life is supposed to be so comfortable for us anyway? They had a lot of people saw one of the twins. I think the famous actor. Is it Tia
and Tamara?
Yeah, I forget which one of them.
Okay, that might be their name on the show. That might not even be the real name.
Right. I think it is. So something along the lines of marriage was a curriculum, and that she's divorced now, but she feels like her marriage was successful because their kids and different things like that. And it was this idea of I realized I was reading up on some of it, and there was a realization that she wasn't happy. And because she wasn't happy, she realized that it was time for her to start making decisions for her.
Yeah.
I feel like that, in my opinion, I feel like that's a type. See, in these middle years, this is like prime time for midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And the thought that this entitlement mindset, especially that we have in Western culture, that we are supposed to be happy.
Right.
We are supposed to be happy. Like, this concept is strong in our Western culture. You look around the world, that's not reflected necessarily in the rest of the world, where oftentimes they try to keep their head above water.
Yeah.
But we have so many luxuries that we just kind of assume that we feel like I should be happy, and if this person isn't making me happy, then there's something wrong with this person. If he can't get with the picture, then I need to start making decisions that make me happy. It's a dangerous place to be, because you can't even make yourself happy.
There's a redefinition of what success in marriage is, and people are now trying to describe marriage as successful when it wasn't successful. Right. Like, divorce is not successful. Is that a controversial statement? Like,
and there are times where sometimes it can.
Right. I get it. I get stuff happens.
Yeah.
There are grounds at times where even Jesus gives permission for people to get divorced when certain things happen.
Not that that's his desire for it, but
there's certain outs that he gives. The point is we live in a time where people call good bad and bad good. Yeah. Jesus says, in this life you will suffer. Yeah. He's not saying in this life you'll suffer, but don't worry, marriage is there. No, that's not the point. Like, in marriage, you're going to suffer. Yeah. The call for the husband is to lay down his life for his wife. The call of a wife is to honor and submit and respect to the husband. Those are not always pleasurable things. Like there's pain in marriage, there's suffering in marriage, there's a death to the spouses in marriage as you seek to build something that honors God.
Yeah.
And so I just think when we get to a place when we're calling things that's not a win, and dressing it up like a win, that's probably
I feel like I've seen that. I've seen just in my own parents' marriage, which wasn't perfect by any means. But there's something about fighting through to the other side. I'm a nurse, and one of my favorite people groups is the elderly. I love the elderly. If you 65, you too young. Like give them to me 70 and older. Ooh, I love me some old people because they just have a different perspective on life. They've been through it all the ups and downs, all the roller coasters. And that at the end of life, you have this different perspective where you're looking back, you're thinking legacy. And when I see those couples who've been married for 60 something years, the things that they had gone through is almost laughable. Like sometimes they're laughing about it, or I say, how long have you been married? 65. Oh my goodness, 65 years. And they say, oh, and she drove me crazy every one of those days, but I love her so much. And I'm like, this is what our aim is. This is what our goal is, because these different things, they do fade away. Our interest in our fire behind all the things that are our strong passions and desires,
those passions wane.
They wane with time, and you get to taste of the beauty of what God really ordained marriage to be, and that's about us being conformed to the image of Christ and us leaving a legacy for the next generation.
It's about the affection that he has for his church.
Yeah.
And we said this, some of y'all may be watching and wouldn't call yourself Christians. That's cool. Keep watching, but just give me a few minutes. This is Christ's affection that he has for his church. So much so that he gives his life. He lays down his life for the church. Look at that sacrifice. He is crucified naked on a cross for our sins that don't deserve him laying down like that. It's almost like somebody should say to Jesus, it don't take all that. Don't do that for them. Like you deserve better. And he's like, you don't even get it. If he does not lay down his life, then we don't have a part in the family of God. I think it's a worthy sacrifice, but we can't sacrifice if we don't even know the definition of the terms.
Right.
And I think that's strong what you said when I was reading in the commentary, it talked about how one of the tricks and schemes of the devil is to take biblical characters who are heroes and turn them into villains, and then take characters in the Bible that are villains and turn them into heroes. And I think so often that's what we've done in this culture. We've called good bad and bad good. We've called what we should be standing up and saying, man, this is something I want to hold on to and fight for. Yeah. We treat it as common, and it's unfortunate. Yeah.
What we're saying is really hard.
Yeah.
This is not easy in any sense. I mean, we have to live by this as well. Yeah. We're in the pot.
In it with you.
I mean, one of the things that holds us accountable is that we've always worked with couples. And sometimes, honestly, we'll work with a couple, and after that, be like, "Get your second cup of tea, girl," because now what's going on with?
We got some work to do. You told her that, but you ain't lived that out.
Listen, Rod, girl,
I'm a hot heater.
Kai is too. It's a hard thing, and so it's not. We don't anticipate this. For people to hear this and be like, well, that's the fix.
Right.
It's really get your tools out and let's get to work. And the work finishes once we are in eternity. We're always working.
Yeah. So let's
you're stuck forever.
Let's wrap this up real quick with some calls to action, man. First thing we want you to do is seek to identify what is that idol, what is that image, what is that thing that's stealing my attention, affection, time for my marriage where I should be investing. Let's call out what that thing is. Is it lust? Is it my fight for control? Is my comfort? Is it acceptance? Is it power? I need to have the power in this situation. What is that thing that I need to call out? Let's have a conversation about that, and let's call out that idol or that fantasy for the thing it is, and let's seek to work together to take the power away from that idol, that fantasy.
Amen. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that this
subscribe,
sparks
share,
some conversation.
Subscribe, share.
Hard words, but good for the soul, right? It's like medicine. Like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Peace.